So recently I got to sit down and watch some newer movies from 2023, The Sound of Freedom, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and The Exorcist Believer. Sit back, relax. I'm going to give you some real quick reviews of all three of these movies.
Covenant, you're calling Raven.
Payback time.
Come with me if you want to live.
You just don't turn it off!
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jason. You're watching Backtrack Cinema, where we talk movies of the past that you know and love. But we're not talking movies of the past today. A little bit. We're going to be going through some 2023 movies. I don't get a lot of time to go to the theater. Not at all. I haven't been to the theater in years, actually, to be honest with you. But I thought, what if I took some newer movies, crammed them into, 3 reviews, and we could just, I'll just graze over them. They won't be detailed reviews, but you'll still get a rating and all that jazz. So we're going to talk about these 3 movies. So let's start with the dark one, The Sound of Freedom. Clearly, this movie had a lot of controversy with it. I'm going to ignore the controversy. It's tied to one individual who I am a big fan of, Jim Caviezel. I love this guy. I just absolutely, I love him as an actor. So we're going to leave a lot of these politics, whatever have you out of this. Just look at the movie. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this movie. It's not a fun watch by any stretch. It's a thriller, an action thriller. Even though there's not a ton of action in it, this is really gets right into the tension and the suspense, the thriller, right? A real thriller. And because of the subject matter, it's tough to watch. Not that they show anything really graphic, but it's tough to watch. But there is, at the end of the movie, it's very heartwarming, satisfying, because this guy, Tim Ballard, played by Jim Caviezel, goes into the far reaches of somewhere where no one else go, literally by himself, rescues just one girl, brings her back to her family. And it's just like the sacrifice he does and the situations he puts himself in to rescue these kids. It was great, man. It really had a great ending. So Sound of Freedom, released in 2023, directed by Alessandro Monteverde, and starring Jim Caviezel, Mira Sorvino, and Bill Camp. It's the incredible true story of a former government agent who embarks on a dangerous mission to rescue hundreds of children from traffickers. So like I said, this movie is dark. Because of the subject matter, you're going to see things, and it implies things that are tough to watch, but an eye-opener too. And the fact that children are being taken away, sold into sex trafficking is deplorable. It's freaking disgusting. But how many of them are taken away? Just the numbers of how people are profiting, and just sick stuff, man. Sick stuff. And this movie walks you along and shows you how, right at the beginning, it shows you how easy your children can be taken right away from you under your nose. There's like the way the movie's set up, and Jim Caviezel dials in another great performance here. Love the performances all around in this. How he gets close to these traffickers, how he kind of goes undercover, what he has to do, finances he needs. They walk you along and all that kind of stuff to show how he does all this. The final climax, the scene is tense because you just want him to get this little girl and get her out of there. You know what I mean? And he does that. We know he's going to do that, but it's that journey. He gets help from a character played by Bill Camp. And there's this one little story why this guy does this, why he also, tries to save children as much as he can. I won't go into it, but he tells us a little situation that happened to him where he just, he turned his life around. He was a cartel, and now he's on the other hand of helping all these children and stuff like that. And it really is a must watch for performances. Like I said, how dark it is. It's thrilling, it's tense, it's dark, real eye opener when they give you some facts at the end about sex, the sex trafficking and all that kind of stuff. Main tagline for this was, "Our children are not for sale, and they should not be." So it really is a good movie, man. I really, really recommend it. And I kind of ignore all the politics and the controversy behind it all. Just try to go into it and for yourself for just an action thriller. And there was surprisingly humor in this. I thought, because of what I was told, that this movie is dark. It's not the most enjoyable watch. It's not like enjoyable to watch what's going on, but there was actually some humor to break those moments of tension up, which I really like. So I'm going to give The Sound of Freedom a B+. Next up is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was released in 2023, directed by James Mangold, and starring Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and Mads Mikkelsen. Man, you either loved it, you hated it, maybe you're in the middle. Ugh, didn't love it, didn't hate it. I guess I'm somewhere in the middle on this one. While I'm talking to you right now, I still don't know how I'm going to grade this. Is it a CGI fest? Hell yeah, it is. It's a big CGI fest, but not all of it is bad. The opening sequence, we get to see a 40s Indiana Jones again, back doing what he did in the old movies, you know, beating up Nazis, taking out Germans, you know, trying to get this trinket. There's a nice big chase on with a train and all that kind of stuff, and the de-aging. The de-aging's probably the best I've seen in a movie so far, but we're still not there yet with de-aging, I think. I mean, for the most part, it was really good. The fact that it was shot at night, they covered up a lot of the CGI, but the problem with the de-aging, the biggest problem I see with it is we have Harrison Ford still in the role. The de-aging looks great, but there's moments, you know, when he's speaking, he still sounds like an old man, or when he goes to get into a car, he moves like an old man because Harrison Ford is in his 80s. So you're not going to get that same thing with all the practical effects and all that jazz, but it was nice to see it was nice to see Harrison Ford back in that role, back in the old days, like in the 30s or whatever it was, and maybe it was the 40s, doing what he's doing, going on this adventure. It was like a movie within a movie, and I thought that was great. Harrison Ford as an old man still kills it. I still like seeing him in the role, all that kind of stuff. But they go for a bit more of a bleak Indiana Jones here, where they set up this story where he's in a state of grief. His son has died. He's getting divorced from Marion. So I don't know why they do this in movies. Even though I wasn't the biggest fan of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I thought it ended great. I thought it was a really satisfying ending. And then they do this. They take us, we're knocking the character back down. I get what they're doing, but it's the execution of all that I didn't enjoy. So we got this character, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Helena or Helena. I don't know how you pronounce her name, but she is somebody from Indy's past who he knew as a little girl, one of his sidekicks, one of his friends that I believe they just inserted in this movie because I don't remember this character at all. So they're inserting something that we never saw in the other movies. He calls her Wombat in it when she's like 12 years old. They have this trinket, this dial of destiny kind of thing that they're fighting over. And, you know, she has grown up. She has learned everything her father has taught her and everything. And initially I thought, you know, she was all about the artifact. She was going to be like a younger Indiana Jones. They were going to go on this adventure together, in which they do. But she ends up being just about herself, money. And I just did not like this character. I didn't like how she talked down to Indiana Jones all the time. There was no respect for him. I hate how the film did this.
Hey, lady, you call him Dr. Jones.
And it seems like they did it a lot. It's very similar to how some people feel Sarah Connor in Dark Fate was really talked down to and was really disrespected. I feel like they did that here too. So I wasn't really big on her character. I wasn't really big on the villains either, and they had some dynamite actors in here. Boyd Holbrook is a great actor. Mads Mikkelsen's a great actor, but I just didn't get anything from them. I just didn't think they were good villains at all. I like the idea of going back in time, the Dial of Destiny, you know, and they go back in time to like before BC. They meet Archimedes, who made this thing. And Indiana Jones wants to stay there. I liked all that kind of stuff with it. Was I the only one who was expecting a Back to the Future ending? Was I the only one who's, when she knocks out Indiana Jones and then he wakes up, Marion's there and all that, I was expecting Indy to wake up and his son being alive, where she actually went back in time and changed things. I know that probably opens up a whole new can of worms, but I thought that would have served her character better, and I thought it would have left everything really on a really good note. Like he comes back and he's still married to Marion. his son's there. Maybe his son got into archaeology too, and it just ends it all. That's what I was expecting. I still like Marion coming back, and they do that nice scene where he goes, where she goes, "Where does it hurt?" And he goes, "It hurts here," and she kisses him, and you got that shot of the window, and he picks up his hat, whatever. I still like all that stuff, and obviously I thought the action sequences were fine. I thought things dragged on a bit. This movie was much longer than it needed to be, but the chase sequences were still pretty good. The performances, the directing, I love James Mangold. I thought it was all pretty good. It's this creative decisions that they made with this movie that really brought it down for me. And and I can look past most CGI too. I know people said the CGI, it was a CGI fest, but you're not gonna get movies practically like they were. It was still a very entertaining movie. I still got a lot of enjoyment out of it. A lot of stuff just brought it down. I still love seeing Harrison Ford back as Indiana Jones. So I'm going to give Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny a C. Next up is The Exorcist Believer, directed by David Gordon Green here. So he just finished a Halloween trilogy that didn't really land for me, but there was a lot of good moments in that little trilogy. And then he decides to do The Exorcist here. And I think this movie was defeated before it even started. I mean, people just got onto the hate train with this one. Now, is it great? It is not great. It's a pretty bad Exorcist movie, but I think it's a serviceable possession movie. Whenever you make a sequel to a classic like The Exorcist, a movie that just changed horror, it was a game changer, you're never going to be that good. So I wasn't expecting it to be that good. I was expecting it just to be an okay horror film. Is it a 1-star film? No, it's not a 1-star film. It's better than that. A lot of people I've heard say it starts good, and they're right. It actually does start really good. It starts like Prisoners with these 2 girls going missing, and that's how it starts. But then it turns into a possession movie like The Exorcist, where I feel like the second half of this movie is really, really rushed. So when 2 girls disappear into the woods and return 3 days later with no memory of what happened to them, the father of one girl seeks out Chris Macneil, who's been forever altered by what happened to her daughter 50 years ago. So the first half of this movie, I think they really tried to make it a slow burn, character-driven kind of story. These 2 girls, classmates, they go missing. They come back, and that's where all the possession, the demon stuff starts happening. They focus on the one father in this movie, and they show the backstory where he loses his wife, and he ends up having to make this choice: save the wife or save the daughter. And then it cuts, and we see it years later. He's a single father, so we go, oh, the daughter, he chose the daughter. But there's a big reveal at the end where he actually chose the wife, and that's where the demon's kind of playing with his mind and everything like that. The demon's playing with his mind, and went later on during the possession, how, you chose, you don't even want me, and all that kind of stuff, talking in the little girl's voice. So he's really set up with this guy's, he's an atheist, and he's really set up with this guy's journey into the faith and maybe believing after everything is said and done. So they are tapping into similar themes with The Exorcist, like with Father Karras, where he was losing his faith. He saves Reagan at the end. But it's the second half of this movie that feels rushed. This is where they bring in Chris Macneil. And I don't even really understand why Chris Macneil was even brought into it, really. I think they were doing really well with these new characters and going through the story. I think they should have stuck to that. This movie, it doesn't land well at all. But is it nice seeing Chris Macneil back? Yeah, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy Ellen Burstyn in this. I think some of the lines they gave her, I was just like, who freaking wrote that? When they're going on to what happened to her, and she says, well, I never saw the actual exorcism with Reagan. They never let me in. Personally, I thought I wasn't part of their patriarch. And I was like, what? Are you kidding? Who put that line? Who wrote that fucking line? They were conquering the devil. That's why you weren't allowed in there. Because the devil could have got into any of them. How it got into Father Karras, right? It was too dangerous to freaking go in there. I'm like, what? Then I'm like, why is this character even here? Now, I do like the possession scene where they notch her eyes out. They notch Chris Macneil's eyes out. She ends up being blind, and there's this backstory because she wrote a book on everything that happened with Reagan. Reagan's not talking to, hasn't talked to her in years. And right at the end, Reagan shows up. Nice to see Linda Blair. Yeah, it was nice to see Linda Blair. And I feel like they're just dropping all the characters we spent time with. And maybe the sequel to this is going to be focused on Reagan and Chris Macneil. And I'm like, okay, but what was the point of this, all these other characters? So I'm, you know, I really wanted to sit with this movie more. It's okay. It's not as bad as everyone's saying it is, right? Personally, I don't think this is a dumpster fire. But Conjuring 3 may even be better than this. It's not great. It's not great at all, but I do like the performances all around. I think everyone's performance is good. I think the cinematography is pretty good. I thought the girls were pretty good who are possessed. I thought they acted pretty creepy. I thought the acting when they were in the whole possession scene where they're both strapped to the chairs and stuff like that. I thought it all really worked. Thought the girls were creepy. Let's face it. This movie's not going to shock you. The Exorcist was shocking because what it did for its time with the spinning head, the levitating beds, you know, Reagan being lifted up, just the way Linda Blair looked at everything with all that makeup. It was so new at the time and people weren't ready for that. Doing it now, it's just not going to work as much. So you had to focus on character. Big time. You had to focus on character and story. In the first half, they were really doing that. So they kind of dropped the ball in this movie, I believe. So I'm going to give The Exorcist Believer a C. Well, what about you guys? Let me know in the comments below what you think of all three of these movies, Indiana Jones, The Exorcist Believer, and The Sound of Freedom. We'll have a good discussion in those comments. And if you like movie reviews, go down the rabbit hole, check the end card, click on other videos. You'll have a good time on the channel. I promise you that. And if you're new, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, share the videos, do what you can to grow Backtrack Cinema. My name is Jason. You're watching Backtrack Cinema. I will see you next time, and I will see you in the movies. Cheers.